Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Zhu, and we'll just start in a minute. Um, Meanwhile, I'll tell you a little bit about that background. It was made at the Stanford printmaking studio. It was my first time doing lithography, and I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to move my head, but it's Vito Acconci, and his piece theme song, as I described, and I made a presentation on him. My face is projected on my back. So it's been a really long year, and I haven't been able to go back to the print studio, but I'm so happy to be here with you today, talking about two of my favorite art pieces. And I think we should get started. You can see that we have art breaks almost every week with student guides, and please tune in when you have a chance. What I'll talk about today is a little bit about time, and time is of great interest to me because I'm a composer, and it's great because when you compose a piece of music, you can trap people and you make them sit through your piece through time. And that's not necessarily true with visual art, but someone can glance at a piece, at a painting, and then for 5 seconds or even less than that, a millisecond, and leave. But I think the two works I'll describe today really capture the viewer. The first is Vija Selman's Barrier. And this painting is at the Anderson collection, and it was painted in the 80s, and it's not large at all. And it looks very flat when you first come to it, but if you look closer, there's a lot of depth. And because I wanted to sort of talk about this painting with music, I made a little video that I'll play for you. Just so, because Zoom, it's a little hard to juggle all of these different types of media together. So I'll just play this on YouTube, and please let us know in chat if you can't see it, and perhaps we can send you a link. Here it goes.
In many ways, it's the most quotidian scene, the night sky. We've all seen it before, yet we have no frame of reference, no horizon or airplane or satellite to compare to. We are lost in the monumentality of the universe. An almost endless, expansive painting, yet it's not ostentatious. Some stars are closer and brighter and larger, and some are further away and sparkle less. But unlike a photograph that holds representation hostage in its thousands of pixels, painting is always more abstract on some level because there's a practical limit on artists' tools. A brush can only be so small. So to be very literal, Vija Selman's Barrier is a cloud of tiny gray circles dotting a muted black canvas. That might be simple to say, but it's hard to do. Each filled circle is made with considerable skill. Selman fastidiously mixes a unique color on her palette, marks the canvas, then sands the surface down and repaints the section until the surface of the painting is thick with layers of paint, yet smooth. Her practice is incredibly time-consuming, all-consuming. She builds a painting layer by layer. Selman also doesn't paint from life. Rather, she is interested in the portrayal of nature, but never exactly reaching it. This painting's origin was not the night sky, but a newspaper cutout. Selman is best known for these flat, contemplative renditions of natural scenes from photographs without a perspectival point or reference horizon, like drawings of waves or spider webs. The elements are blatantly stated, almost obvious, but when it seems like there's not that much to see, that's when you and I can fill in the space with internal thoughts. Selman talks about her own work as lying somewhere between distance and intimacy. I can feel the hundreds of hours Selman spent on this painting, and perhaps something unconscious then seeps into the work. We pay attention because Selman has paid countless more hours to it, the density weaving memory into the painting. Yet it's an age-old art trick. Painting is an illusion. No matter how painstakingly detailed or religiously copied the painting is, it's still an image and not the real thing. With study remove, Selman's pushes us to question, what is veracity in painting? What then can we hold true in our own lives?
Hopefully the quality was okay for you. That piece was one of my compositions, played by Andy Meyerson on vibraphone. And perhaps this is a good time to introduce myself a little bit. I am in my third year. I just finished my third year in the music composition doctorate, and I used to be a painter. And this was, I would say, my last painting, which is what it's titled. And it's quite large. I still paint very, very small works, because I wanted to focus on music, which I felt sort of best sort of portrayed how I see the world, I think. And I also play the carillon, which is on campus. And if you go to the Anderson Collection or the Cantor, you'll see a large tower rising up from the middle of campus. And sometimes you'll hear bells, and probably more often than not, it's me. And so just to introduce it a little bit, I'll play you something I'm playing on the Hoover Tower, which is Preludio 7 by Matthias van de Ging. One of the earliest composers for carillon. All right. I just, to give you a little context, I'm at the top of the tower, so I'm close to the bells, and everything is mechanical. So all the batons that I'm pressing down are connected via wires to the clapper of the bell. And there are 48 bells in this carillon. And I actually don't know what it sounds like on the ground because I'm always in the tower, but people have told me you can hear it on all parts of the campus, and many parts of the campus. Stanford's campus is very large. The Henrietta's question is, can any student get permission to play at the Hoover Tower Carillon? I think you would first take lessons with the carillonneur, or I guess with me. And I've been playing the carillon for, 12 years now, and went to school for it to have a professional degree. So I really encourage anyone to come with me, though. So if you want to visit the Hoover Tower with me while I'm going, I'm happy to take anyone and show anyone the instrument. So just moving on. This is the Anderson collection for those of you who haven't been. And I just wanted to point out that last time I was there, sort of to the right of this painting was via Selman's barrier. And also if you go behind the Pollock, there will be the Louise Nevelson's sky Sky Garden that I'll talk about in a moment. But I wanted to give you the context for this, for these paintings, because the space is very airy, and it really, and you're often sort of alone there in a room. And I think that it really helps you sort of experience the work in solitude, in your own memories. And for me, when I see this painting, I hear music. And I actually wrote a piece based on the night sky, called The Answers. And for me, sort of like Selman's, I really take inspiration from nature. And so this piece, each string instrument is a planet, and given its exact orbit and vantage point and rotation, I assigned sort of these ratios. And in music, ratios matter a lot, because according to a fundamental tone, if you build ratios on top of each other, you sort of get different pitches that really resonate with each other and are very consonant. So I'll just play you a little bit of this string quartet played by the Jack Quartet. All right, sorry for that sharp cut. But for me, sort of that composition was sort of a monochromatic composition. It was algorithmic, and it was, based on these ratios and the timings coming from the planets. And for that sort of reason, I think this sort of like abstract expressionist movement is really inspiring to me. Same with sort of abutting that sort of the Fluxus movement with John Cage, and also minimalism with Morton Feldman. But so this piece by Louise Nevelson actually is situated right in that time period. And this particular piece is located in the back atrium of the Anderson. And when we first see it, it's just a black mass against the wall, and sort of sitting on like a thin wooden ground here. You don't know if it's a pedestal or is it a painting. It sort of rose from the floor, firm and square, kind of like a bureau of drawers. And when you walk closer, the construction of the sculpture becomes clear. It's, found wooden boxes, and some with hinges, and other objects like crates or table legs or banisters or driftwood are glued and nailed together within these boxes. And on top of this sort of three-dimensional like sort of collage, Nevelson has painted several layers of thick matte and black paint. And I think a monochrome painting can be interesting in and of itself, but because Sky Garden is a sculpture, the interior of the boxes, you can see in this photograph, are darker than the surface. And there's a depth and spectrum of blacks and grays. And the black overcoat of the paint also has an effect of sort of flattening the variety of objects into a monumental composition. And I use composition intentionally because it does feel like it's musical here, and it's in its form and in its sort of its detail and ornamentation is sort of this large boxes of, you know, these different sections, but then inside are sort of, I think, to me, different musical phrases. And so I feel like here in this sculpture, sort of this monumental composition then sort of has these have the edges, their edges become sort of like a painted line instead of just assemblage of objects, sort of this continuum of time. But going even closer, we can see how sort of the objects are laid out, sort of as if being shown on an operating room table. Most objects are rectangular in shape and laid on a grid, contained by its individual cubby. And the linear structure of all of these objects are also balanced by some curving forms, such as these like spindles and finials. And for me, I see skyscrapers of New York City, and also the interior lives of the people who live in the boxes in New York City. I think Nevelson also takes advantage of the texture of the objects. On the leftmost hinged panel, like you can see here, 3 planks of wood are glued side by side. And the middle plank, I don't know if you can see this, has vertical grooves, whereas the right plank has, you know, deep horizontal grooves like this. And the left plank is relatively smooth. And so the history of the wood is used to make formal decisions here, sort of kind of like cross-hatching and drawing. And so these tiny details stand out, like a nail piercing a circular hole, like a diameter line, or how 2 hinged panels are evocative of altarpieces. And maybe you can see that better here. So you can see the hinged panels right here and over there. Nothing is hidden, yet it seems like all memories seem to be simultaneously erased with the black. Now, Nevelson was born in Russia and emigrated with her family to America in the early 20th century. And she was known for these kinds of assemblages. And she made sculptures as part of the Art Students League in New York City, studying with Hans Hofmann and working with Diego Rivera, possibly as an answer to sort of the very male abstract expressionists, also which like we have a lot in the Anderson collection, including another painter of black things, Ad Reinhardt. And but more importantly, she lived in Soho, which wasn't very glitzy as it is now, and she lifted detritus from the streets and painted them black. And she describes black as a total color, meaning it contains all. It contained all color. It wasn't negation of color, it was an acceptance, because black encompasses all colors. Black is the most aristocratic color of all, the only aristocratic color. I've seen things that were transformed into black that took on greatness. I don't want to use a lesser word. And that's a quote from her. And she wanted to be great. And so she created these dark, masculine, totem-like artworks that reflected her ambition, perhaps, challenging the notion of a female artist. But it wasn't without sacrifice. She left her husband to pursue her dreams, and took her son with her, but she lived in poverty for many, many years. For me, this black obliterates the history of the objects and unifies the work into an all-consuming spiritual color, like Nevelson says. And I don't know. I think it's possible that the nailing of domestic and found street objects together could point to perhaps her feelings about her uprooted childhood, maybe assimilating into like American or New York culture. But I think perhaps what's most striking about this piece which is, I think appropriately titled Sky Garden, is a divinity of nature and spirituality. And that relates to Selman's barrier for me. I think a lot of artists at that time were working with steel, but Nevelson was experimenting with other media, like wood, an organic material that seems to hold a memory of its past life. And I think it can both evoke the city and natural forms and celestial bodies. So I think in this piece, each wooden piece can be viewed on an intimate scale, but together they become a towering sculpture. I think complex in texture, space, and narrative. So I'd love to take any questions if you have any, and please put that into the chat. Otherwise, I think we can wrap up and I can sign off, but really, truly, I'd love to answer any questions you have. In the meantime, you can see that there are more tours and events coming up. Students can sign up for, various events and I think collaborations the museum has with students at Stanford. So some programming and more art breaks with other students. So yeah, okay, so Tina. Tina says, wow, I have seen the tower at a distance from various hikes, but did not think about a person making music in real time. Thank you, Julie Zhu. I love to hear about other connections to these artworks we can share in common. Okay, so not a question, but thank you so much for writing that. I really appreciate it. And Amy talks of if Selman's and Nevelson ever cross paths. I don't think so. I don't know the exact answer to that, but Nevelson was quite early on in the 20th century, and Selman's is still alive, and she still works in Manhattan. So, thank you. Oh, and Alex, thanks. Oh gosh, yes. So Julie, Alex says, Professor Nemerov at Stanford says, Julie, thank you so much. Can you comment on the relation of your piece, The Answers to Charles Ives, the Unanswered Question? And I really thank you for talking about that. Charles Ives wrote a piece, a chamber piece called The Unanswered Question. And in it, these instruments sort of play in vastly different, wouldn't even know, like, modalities. And so it's one is like very consonant and the other sort of interjects. And are they even tuned to half semitone? I don't think so, but etc. And it's a little bit of a reference because this piece is composed in just intonation, which is according to the harmonic series of I don't know, tones. If you pluck a string, various other tones arise from the plucking of the string. And this is sort of in accordance to that. And so the piano, even though it's very versatile, doesn't have that ability. It's equal tempered, which means you can transfer between different keys, but it doesn't necessarily have the kind of consonance that you would feel if you would listen to a choir sing a perfect major third or a perfect fifth. And so I think it is my answer to that unanswered question, which is like, what is harmony? So thank you for asking that question. Thank you, Rosemary, for saying that you love the connection between art and music. And Kate you said that you don't paint anymore, but that you do make prints. Do you see your interests in printmaking and music composition intersecting or speaking to and with each other? I think, yeah, I do. I love printmaking, and I love the way that it's made, and that sort of you have the idea and you either carve or you etch, and then you're not really sure how it'll turn out. And I've used a lot of my prints sort of as inspiration for various compositions. And I think in composition, it's the same way. You write something and you have an image or a sound in your mind, but you really don't know what it'll sound like until it's played. And Henrietta asked, oh, I skipped something. Mackenzie said, ratios in music. Do you see a relationship between math and the visual art pieces you looked at? I do. I feel like there's a stochasticity in Selman's piece, and also in Nevelson's, I think, sort of the accumulation on a large scale, I think naturally follows patterns. And we can see that in avalanches, we can see that, I know, even in sort of like wildfires, we can see that in almost all forces of nature. And I think when these artists put a lot of things together, like Selman's with her like points of stars, and also the accumulation of objects with Nevelson, I think we feel that force at play. Henrietta asked about my last painting, if I'll ever paint again. I think I will, maybe not right now, but painting maybe was too unhealthy for me. And Alex, Professor Narmrob said, just follow up, is art unanswered, or is it like Nevelson's work, for your marvelous phrase, simultaneously open and hidden? And I think he has answered his own question. And I do believe it's unanswered. Although we hope that each new piece and each piece in front of us provides us with answers to our own personal questions. And Tina said that nature accumulation idea fits so well with my experience seeing a range of Selman's show at SF MoMA. Yes, that show was absolutely amazing at SF MoMA. I'm so glad that you were able to see that, and that I was able to as well. I think she's an amazing artist, and really an artist that you have to sort of see all of her oeuvre like together. Because each piece takes so long. I mean, I think you have to see decades of her work to sort of get at, I feel like, what she's trying to show the world. So thank you so much. If we don't have any questions anymore, then I'll sign off. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, my email is zoojulie@stanford.edu. Please, I'm happy to continue the conversation. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.